Good morning. Today on Memoirs of a Thinking Man, we'll be talking about ancient paganism. From crystal skulls to tarot decks, from ancient fertility idols to Instagram witches, our culture is swimming in the same spiritual waters as ancient paganism, just repackaged for the modern world. What once dwelled in hidden temples and shadowy groves now thrives on social media, bookstore shelves, and pop culture, cloaked in aesthetics and self-discovery, but driven by the same old spirits. Walter Martin once said, "The occult is not just superstition, it is rebellion in religious form." Today we explore the roots of that rebellion, ancient paganism. Walter Martin reminds us that modern occultism is not new. It's the old gods returning under new names. But the truth of Christ remains unchanged. You shall have no other gods before me. In Romans 1:22-23 we read, "Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles." The nature of pride is always to claim wisdom and authority for us. We think we know best and think God does not understand. We refuse to acknowledge that God, as our creator, knows what is best for us. Paul says that professing to be wise, they became fools. When we live in pride and claim that we can find our own fulfillment apart from God, we believe something very foolish. Things don't create themselves. The Creator made all that is seen and unseen, and when we deny this, we embrace all that is foolish. Our need to be professing to be wise is because deep down we know we are wrong. Therefore, we have a need to assert that we are wise. One thing at which humankind is extremely accomplished is in developing clever arguments to rationalize truly foolish behavior. We tend to profess this foolish behavior as wisdom. God-centered wisdom is foolishness to human-centered reasoning, and vice versa. To believe the universe created itself is to disbelieve all that is observable. Energy is never observed to ascend to a higher level. Intelligence is never assembled by non-intelligence, and order is never observed to come from disorder. Yet many believe the world made itself. They believe in magic without a magician, and insist it is wise. Further, they insist that anyone who believes there is a magician, creator, is foolish. When we assert our pride, claim wisdom and authority for ourselves, deciding that we know best, that God does not understand as well as we do, we embrace what is foolish. Since we have denied the Creator who made us and to whom we are accountable, we must then raise an alternative moral authority to whom we may appeal to justify ourselves. Humanity has been very creative about this exercise throughout history. We've exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man and of birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. We have claimed that divinity and therefore moral authority resides in animals, statues, and in man himself. Pharaoh and subsequent rulers routinely claimed to be divine, and during the roughly 1,000 years of the Holy Roman Empire, humans claimed a divine right to decide for God on earth. But God is God, and we are not. In modern times, in the developed West, it has become popular for individuals to claim the divine right of deciding morality for themselves. We have skipped seeking outside validation. "I know what is right for me" has become a popular sentiment. Paul tells us here in Romans 1:18-23 that we know the truth because God has placed the truth within us and all around us, but professing to be wise, we became fools. We typically reject that truth and exchange it for a lie. In doing this, we deceive ourselves into believing that we get to decide what is right and wrong as though we have God's authority. When we do this, we believe something very foolish and self-destructive. Paul states that as a result of choosing pride in self instead of faith in God, their foolish heart was darkened. We should therefore expect an escalation in mental health issues as a society descends into self-orientation. This will be predicted in the next sections. Paganism developed as humanity rejected God's self-revelation. It centers on nature worship, polytheism, sorcery, and ritualism. Walter Martin's warning, these were not harmless myths, but spiritual counterfeits that enslaved people. Paganism is a symptom of man's rebellion, trying to create God in his own image. In 1 Corinthians 10:20 we read, "No, but the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God, and I do not want you to be participants with demons." Paul has finally reached the main reason he will warn the Christians in Corinth from eating food that has been offered to idols. It's not that the idols themselves represent real gods. He has been clear, the idols are fake, and the gods do not exist. 1 Corinthians 8:4-7 says, "So then, about eating food sacrificed to idols, we know that an idol is nothing at all in the world, and that there is no God but one. For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live. And there is but one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came and through whom we live." But not everyone possesses this knowledge. Some people are still so accustomed to idols that when they eat sacrificial food, they think of it as having been sacrificed to a god, and since their conscience is weak, it is defiled. It's that those who worship them are, perhaps without even knowing it, offering sacrifices to demons. Now Paul finally reveals why it is essential that Christians draw hard lines on what participation they will have with idols. Real demons stand as the power behind those figures made with human hands. Idol worship provides demons with an entry point into the lives of those involved. The Bible is clear that though idols and gods are powerless human creations, demons are true supernatural beings who exercise supernatural power in the everyday world. Demons are former angels that joined Satan in his rebellion against God. Revelations 12:3-4-9 says, "Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its head. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him." The Bible teaches that they are active in the world today. None of Paul's readers would have said, "What's a demon?" Demon possession of human beings was common and openly accepted as reality during the time of Jesus and Paul. Demons were understood to be both powerful and harmful, especially among believers. It's unlikely any of the Corinthian Christians would have suggested that participation with demons was not a problem. Paul's teaching that demons were a real power behind fake idols also was not a new idea. Psalm 106 describes some of the sins of Israel, including the worship of idols. It says this, "They served the idols which became a snare to them. They sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons. They poured out innocent blood, the blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. Ancient idols were more than stone. They were gateways for demonic deception. Behind Baal, Moloch, Isis, or Thor lurked real spiritual entities opposed to God. Walter Martin emphasizes the reality of these forces and their influence through occult systems. Just as a Ouija board is not just a game, so the idols of old weren't just art. They were instruments of enslavement. We must view occult practices not as curiosities, but spiritual backgrounds. In Ecclesiastes 1:9 we read, "What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun." This verse is part of the book of Ecclesiastes, which is attributed to King Solomon, the wise and wealthy king of Israel. The book is known for its philosophical reflections on the meaning of life and the futility of human endeavours apart from God. The verse is part of a larger passage in which the preacher, likely Solomon, laments the never-ending cycles of life and the seeming lack of progress or change in the world. The verse reflects a sense of pessimism and fatalism about the human condition. It suggests that history repeats itself and that there is a cyclical nature to human existence. It also implies that the human actions and achievements are ultimately insignificant in the grand scheme of things. This perspective can be seen as a direct challenge to the prevailing wisdom of the time, which often focused on human achievement and the pursuit of wisdom and knowledge. The theme of futility and the cyclical nature of life runs throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. The preacher observes that all is vanity and that there is no lasting value or meaning in the things of the world. This can be a difficult and challenging message for readers, particularly those who place a high volume on human accomplishment and progress. The verse also has a timeless quality as it speaks to a universal human experience. The idea that there is nothing new under the sun suggests that the basic patterns and struggles of human existence remain constant across time and cultures. This can be both comforting and disheartening, depending on one's perspective. On the one hand, it reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles and that others have faced similar challenges throughout history. On the other hand, it can lead to a sense of hopelessness and resignation. In terms of context, the verse is part of a larger passage that can contrast the fleeting nature of human life with the enduring nature of God. The preacher observes that people and generations come and go, but the earth remains forever. This sets the stage for a larger theological reflection on the nature of God and his relationship to humanity. It ultimately leads to the conclusion that true meaning and fulfillment can only be found in fearing God and keeping his commandments. There is also a sense of symbolism in the verse, particularly in the reference to under the sun. This phrase is used throughout Ecclesiastes to refer to the temporal earthly realm as opposed to the eternal heavenly realm. The cyclical nature of life and the lack of anything new under the sun point to the limitations of human understanding and experience. It suggests that true wisdom and meaning can only be found by looking beyond the physical world and seeking a deeper spiritual understanding. In conclusion, Ecclesiastes 1:9 is a thought-provoking and challenging verse that reflects on the cyclical nature of human existence and the futility of human endeavours apart from God. It challenges prevailing ideas about human accomplishment and progress, and it points to a deeper, much enduring source of meaning and fulfillment. Although it can be a difficult passage to grapple with, It ultimately offers a profound and timeless insight into the nature of life and the human condition. Neo-paganism, Wicca, astrology and spiritism are modern revivals of ancient rites. TikTok, witches, goddess worship and crystal healing mimic ancient fertility cults and nature rituals. Walter Martin saw this as a strategic revival of the demonic under the guise of personal empowerment. Modern man laughs at the old gods, but bows to their philosophies. Christians must be spiritually alert, discerning truth from error, even when it's trending. In Isaiah 44, 9-20 we read, "All who make idols are nothing, and the things they treasure are worthless. Those who would speak up for them are blind, they are ignorant to their own shame. Who shapes a god and casts an idol which can profit nothing? People who do that will be put to shame. Such craftsmen are only human beings. Let them all come together and take their stand. They will be brought down to terror and shame. The blacksmith takes the tool and works with it in the coals. He shapes an idol with hammers. He forges it with the might of his arm. He gets hungry and loses his strength. He drinks no water and grows faint. The carpenter measures with a line and makes an outline with a marker. He roughs it out with chisels and marks it with compasses. He shapes it in human form in all its glory, that it may dwell in a shrine. He cut down cedars, or perhaps took a cypress or oak. He let it grow among the trees of the forest, or planted a pine, and the rain made it grow. It is used as fuel for burning. Some of it he takes and warms himself. He kindles a fire and bakes bread, but he also fashions a god and worships it. He makes an idol and bows down to it. Half the wood he burns in the fire. Over it he prepares his meal. He roasts his meat, and eats his fill. He also warms himself and says, 'Ah, I am warm. I see the fire.' From the rest he makes a god, his idol. He bows down to it and worships. He prays to it and says, 'Save me, you are my God.' They know nothing. They understand nothing. Their eyes are plastered over so they cannot see, and their minds closed so they cannot understand. No one stops to think. No one has the knowledge or understanding to say, 'Half of it I use for fuel. I even baked bread over its coals. I roasted meat and I ate. Shall I make a detestable thing from what is left? Shall I bow down to a block of wood?' Such a person feeds on ashes. A deluded heart misleads him. He cannot save himself or say, 'Is not this thing in my right hand a lie?'" All the nations surrounding Israel had temples with idols, symbols, or representative of the gods. Though not themselves divine, idols were worshipped and served as though God themselves. Through them, the gods were thought to be accessible. Service of the idols secured the favour of the gods. Isaiah, however, insists that such worship is nothing for at least two reasons. The first reason is spelled out in detail in the fierce satire of this passage. Idols are made by human hands. How then can they possibly be gods? How can they save? The prophet's concern here is God's own. The point is not to condemn the idols simply as silly, though they are, but to get to the heart of the matter. They cannot save. God cares first and foremost for the well-being of Israel and of all the world. So God fervently wills that people not squander their religious energies by praying to a God that cannot save. "How absurd," says the prophet, "to worship human work. The work is real, the artistry is fine, the effort itself perhaps commendable, but to worship this is nonsense." The prophet continually identifies God as the one who made all things, who alone stretched out the heavens, who by himself spread out the earth. So why would anyone worship a creature rather than the Creator? The second reason idol worship is nothing is that contrary to human belief, there is no one home behind the idols. I am the Lord and there is no other. Gods and spirits populate the religious world through human history, but 2nd Isaiah makes the strongest biblical case for their non-being. Not merely are they false gods, they are no gods at all. There is none besides God. Because of Israel's sin, their eyes are closed and minds shut, which might make them susceptible to the idolatry of the nations. The prophet calls them back from this by this satirical denunciation of idols. God exposes the folly of idol worshipping, man makes a god out of wood and bows to it. In contrast, our God speaks, acts, saves and judges. Walter Martin said, there is only one answer to the occult, and his name is Jesus Christ. Christ liberates from the bondage of spiritual darkness, call to repentance from occult involvement, and trust in Christ alone. An ex-occultist once said, I searched every path, consulted every spirit, and found only shadows. Then Jesus found me, and I saw the light. Ancient paganism still lives in media, in books, in our schools, and even in our homes. But Christ still reigns. He is the light that dispels all darkness, the truth that exposes every lie. And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. Let us stand, not in fear of ancient gods, but in the victory of Christ. Let us speak boldly, pray fervently, and proclaim the gospel confidently. For the battle belongs to the Lord.